Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is Listening Beyond the Soundbites. We have a sort of new guest today. You've never been on the show, have you?
Never been on it, Pat.
Shame for me, that's bad. This is Mr. William S. Smith, Esquire, or Bill. Bill Smith. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah. He's an attorney, and we're going to do a show on lobbying because Vermont has one of the highest numbers of lobbyists per legislature or whatever the thing is. We've got 500 some odd legislators in the book.
Lobbyists in the
Lobbyists in the
yeah.
book. What did I say? Legislators? Sorry.
Yeah.
Lobbyists in the book. And it's quite an occupation. And they're always up at the State House. Every other person you see is either a legislator or a lobbyist, and an occasional me up there. But so you've been doing this quite a while.
Yeah, more on than off over the last 25 years.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your background? I want to know about when you worked in the legislature for the Speaker of the House.
Oh, yeah, I was an assistant clerk in the House in 94, 95, and 96. So the last year of Ralph Wright and the first 2 years of Mike Obowski.
Excellent. I was just working for state government, so I don't.
Right.
I remember there was a Bill up there who had a band. One of the guys that worked in the front desk there, he had a wonderful band we'd go to see. But that wasn't
me.
you, huh?
Wasn't me. No.
So when did you and our buddy there get together?
Ed Miller.
Ed Miller.
Ed, yeah, Ed. Well, let me back up a little bit. So after being, because it relates to lobbying,
Yeah.
After working in the clerk's office for 3 sessions, I was hired by the Home Builders Association. Kevin Dorn ran it at the
Yes.
time, and was their government affairs person. So that's my first lobbying job.
Excellent.
And I worked for them full time, even though I was a licensed attorney, and they thought that was a value added when it came to either working with towns on zoning matters or
Yeah.
permitting for builders, or in the legislature on government affairs with the legislature and with the government, the administration rather.
Right.
So I did that for 3 years, and then I just went off to private practice until 2005 when Ed Miller and I formed a partnership. And of course, Ed was one of the original lobbyists in Vermont.
Was he?
And let's see, him, Bill Scholdice.
Oh, wow.
Steve Kimball, Bob Sherman.
Oh, that's the group.
Tom Crowley.
Yeah.
Bob Anderson. These are names that you would remember.
Yeah, no, I
Nobody
know
watches
them
Nobody
all.
remembers. Yeah, I know you do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so he was one of the first lobbyists. He worked for the Vermont Police Association, was his very first client. I
remember.
think your husband Bruce was a
Yep.
cop, right?
Yep.
I moved to Northfield where Ed had his practice, and I've been there ever since.
Nice.
So for 20 years now, I've been in Northfield working.
That's great.
Kind of a mix of law practice and lobbying.
Yes, I thought you have a percentage in here. I think it's sort of like 60-40, if I remember what was on your website. 60% regular general law and 40% legislature. But you represent a couple of clients, one of whom is very near and dear to my heart is the Vermont Truck and Bus Company,
Yep.
which association,
Yep.
which I knew Ed because I was commissioner of motor vehicles, and we were
Yes,
always,
you were, Madam
yes,
Commissioner.
I was.
Yes.
And I knew you coming in and out of the office and driving Ed crazy. And then you're also the Northeast Retail Lumber Association,
Yeah.
which is,
Building supplies.
yeah, that's good.
Not forestry products. We have to kind of correct people on that one. a
no
lot.
Bill
Yeah.
Sayer, huh?
Yeah. Nope, not a Bill Thayer or an Ed Larson or
Oh, yeah, Ed Larson.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so
And a couple others that you represent, but that's
yeah.
great.
They come and go. I mean, as groups have interests or their businesses are affected by the Vermont government in some way, they come looking for representation, whether it's legal or lobbying. And lobbying's interesting in a way. It's a lot like being an attorney in a courtroom, but without the rules of evidence.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, what your stock in trade is your truthfulness, and people knowing that you're telling them
Right.
the truth, and that you can bring people in to give them real experiences and real lives that are in Vermont that are going to be affected by proposed legislation.
Well, and I think every story I've ever read or article about lobbyists, and then here in Vermont, because our legislators don't have staff,
Yeah.
that they really rely on you all to do research for them in some cases, and like you just said, to tell them the truth, and your word is your bond up there. That's
They're, Vermont legislators, unlike most states, most other states have staff and offices. They have an office, and you'll
Right.
have a staff person that works just for you. And
Yeah.
and here it's just there's like the pool of the legislative council are the mostly an attorney. I don't think you need to be an attorney in there, but it helps writing proposed legislation, writing
right.
the bills and amendments to them, and explaining them also to committees because the committees need to get up to speed on an issue.
Right.
I mean, you may have written a bill, but but there's 179 other legislators in Vermont that have no idea what you're talking about to start with. So
that is very true. But and which committee do you see? You take truck and bus. What is that? Is that House Gov Ops or
transportation mostly.
Transport?
Yeah.
Of
House and
course,
Senate
transportation. And how about the Lumber Association?
We're some transportation issues because they overlap because they bring trucks come to and from them and they deliver to your house, right? But a lot of times the Commerce Committee and its parallel committee in the Senate, the Economic Development Committee.
Well, when we were talking yesterday, I had something else on my notes, and you said, "Oh, but I'd really like to talk about the Advanced Clean Truck Rule in Vermont." And I have not, shame on me, but I've never picked up on this. And I started looking yesterday.
Yeah.
Rob Roper put out a huge article about this, and it's back to zero emissions. What are they doing?
Well, let's back up to 4.5 years ago, the Global Warming Solutions Act
Yes.
was passed over the governor's veto in September of 2020, and that required Vermont to, clean up its act.
Right.
Among other things, the transportation sector is a large polluter.
Yep.
There's no question about that. And so that's going to fast forward to the fall of 2022 when Agency of Natural Resources was putting together its rules in this. As far as trucks go, I think they worked on cars earlier.
Yep.
Vehicle emissions is the general issue. The focus for the trucking industry is the Advanced Clean Truck Rule, which is a California rule, as most of them are. The California Air Resource Board does a lot of these rules and has had a waiver from the federal government for quite some time on that. And there's a lot of discussion now in Congress about what to do about that. But in the fall of 2022, ANR came around and I invited them to our truck and bus annual meeting.
Yeah.
They came and explained what was going to happen and when it was going to be phased in, and they wanted to do these rules. And the first reaction from the trucking community was, this isn't going to work and we can't afford it. That's the reaction today as well, 2.5 years later.
Right.
We've been pretty consistent on that message about it, and it's troubling to not get the response that these real-world Vermont businesses are real worried about this. And I have colleagues that represent, for example, the truck dealers.
Right.
There's a lot of overlap in that many truck dealers are also members of Vermont Truck and Bus Association, for
Yep.
example. Why? Because that's where their customers are.
Yeah, there you go.
So there's about 300 member businesses in Vermont that are in the Truck and Bus Association, and then also on the retail building supply, companies. Several of them are members as well of Truck and Bus because they all truck things.
Yeah.
And these rules will affect not just big tractor trailers or dump trucks or concrete trucks. It's going to be all the way down to basically a 1-ton contractor's truck. An F-350 Ford, for example, would be covered by these rules. And what are the rules? They require a certain percentage of vehicles sold in Vermont be zero emissions.
How do they accomplish that?
The setup to do it kind of retroactively, like what did you do last year? Like the first year is model year 2026, which starts now.
Right.
And then they look at it and say, did you meet this percentage based on the size of the trucks? Or cars, the cars
Yeah.
have the same thing, where they next year are going to have to be at, I think, 35% of cars
Wow.
need to have
Right.
some zero emissions. I'm not as familiar with that as I am
Yeah,
with the truck
right.
side of it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the trucks, either 10 or 13% of those sold in model year 2026 need to be zero emissions. So how do you do that? And they did try to build some flexibility into this. I will give them credit. They tried to wrap their heads around what was going to make flexibility. The problem was they didn't listen to the businesses in this line of work who said,
why should they
that's
do that?
not going to work. And I've been telling them that's not going to work because the manufacturers aren't going to send trucks to Vermont and hope that, if we sell they sell 9 diesel trucks.
Yeah.
Can they sell, now they have to sell 1 electric truck? It's not going to work like that.
Right.
Because they don't want to risk running afoul of these regulations. So they're going to say, and they are saying to these dealers, is what the dealers are telling me.
Right.
They're telling them that you sell an electric truck and we'll send you 9 diesels to sell after that. Well, let's back up a little bit. So on the purchaser side, the trucking business side, the building supply business, they put orders in sometimes 2 years in advance for a truck.
Yeah, that's right.
So in a year and a half ago, a trucking company went to its dealer, who they probably worked with for decades, and says to them, I want 5 of my usual trucks with my logo on it. I want this, this, and this in it. And I want it to have this kind of transmission, and they order it. Is that part of this? What happens to that? And model year 26 comes along, and there's an order in from trucking company X that they put a deposit on a year and a half ago.
Right.
Because of the supply chain differences, and you want to make sure you got your trucks lined up for when you need to replace them.
Right.
Because they wear out.
Do they ever? Oh.
So because we use them, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing I try to tell folks is that the business of these companies is driving trucks
Right.
for you. Right. I mean, UPS and FedEx are members of my association as well, but so is B&B Trucking up north, with a couple of trucks. Yeah. So the whole range of trucks are in there, and they're all doing something. Nobody runs around in trucks for no reason.
No, exactly.
The reason that truck's on your road going by your house is because somebody
on my dirt road
right?
behind
Somebody
my house.
on that road ordered something.
Right.
Maybe there's a delivery of building supplies to the new house being built down the road.
So are they listening, or are they helping? Are they doing anything?
They're listening. The thing is, legislators are, by and large, all good people who are quite concerned about their communities and about their local businesses, whatever their political persuasion is. And they'll listen, and I think they're all hoping somebody else is going to fix this. Whether it's hoping that the Trump administration fixes it, or Congress, or Governor Scott, or the legislators. I mean, they're playing this game of, pointing at the person next to them, and I'm trying to say, my folks are caught in the middle of this. Whether they're my truck dealer members, or they're my trucking companies, or my building supply companies, they're caught in the middle of this. They don't know what to do. They need to buy trucks. And the big picture concern I have, because I grew up in a family that included dairy farmers in Plainfield and Marshfield for decades and decades, was that just like that industry, we don't want to be like the dairy industry in that all of our infrastructure goes away because it's not being supported by government and it's not being allowed to flourish.
So where are there the bills? The bill has passed both and on its way to the governor. Where is it in the process? The bill.
The bill.
The bill?
Well, there was a
bill?
bill introduced quite late in this session here, H503.
Yeah.
Representative Chris Keyser, a new legislator, but a member of the House Transportation Committee. Cool. They did have a discussion about it, and that bill would pause the rules for 5 years.
Oh, and do we have the authority to do that over the feds?
Well, it would be pausing Vermont rules, the A&R rules in Vermont that require, trucks sold in Vermont.
That makes sense.
It would do that. There's a lot of pushback on that. How many years should it be? Does it need to be 5 years? Who should do it? Right. Other states, whether it's Massachusetts, Maryland, a couple other states that were in this interstate compact
Right.
with advanced clean truck have pulled out, or they paused their rules.
Oh, so why don't we? There you go.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So I think legislators will say, make the governor do it. The governor's saying, maybe the legislature should do it.
How
Or
is the
maybe
governor going to do it? Executive order, or what's he going to do?
Well, they're ANR's rules. Agency,
There
Why
you go.
doesn't the
Back to
ANR
the L
pause the
part.
rule? We're not, again, it's not about that we don't want a clean environment.
Right.
It's that we've gotten about as clean as you're going to get with what we got right now.
Yes, right.
And the technology they're putting forward on the large truck level is not there yet.
Right, I understand.
We've done quite a lot with electric cars. And if you buy an electric car in Vermont, up through now at least, there's been quite a lot of incentives, financial incentives to buy them and install chargers in your home and install chargers near your workplace. And that's been largely, subsidized by, government money.
Right.
But it's a whole level, a scale level, much lower than what we're talking about when it comes to trucks.
Now, they
You
want.
can't just plug your truck in for an hour and have it ready to go.
Right. Well, I was just thinking about the difference in size between my car and the big trucks.
Yeah.
It's got to take you longer if it's electric to plug in because things are a little larger in a truck, correct? So for the
Yeah.
hour that you're there waiting to continue your trip, in Maryland while you're waiting to charge up, a truck's got to be there a lot longer than that, right?
Well, yeah, because the batteries are bigger, they
Right.
require more. It's either more time or more energy going into it. And even if it's a lot of energy going
Yeah.
into it, these, they call more than a level 3 charger, but it's something that can charge these batteries up.
Right.
That could probably charge your car in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Will still take hours.
Yeah, right.
With the
That's what I'm
battery for a
thinking.
truck, and the batteries are heavy. I mean, they add somewhere between $6,000 and $10,000 in weight to a truck versus an existing diesel truck of the exact same configuration. They're really, it's just not there yet.
Yep.
You know?
And I don't think the infrastructure is there with the stations,
Well,
with the charging
yeah.
stations. They're not there.
Right,
Not-
the scale, again, the scale of the
Yeah.
charging station that would be needed if you had a lot of
Yeah,
big trucks pulling into them and needing these large chargers. There's already a parking crisis in the trucking industry nationwide.
oh, is there really?
Oh,
No-
it's,
no
that's,
place
that's,
for
that's
them to go?
always one of the top 3 issues
Really?
nationally is parking. Because you remember this from the DMV probably, is that the hours of service, right?
Well, that's, yeah.
Trucking, there's a federal law that says you
Right.
can't drive 24 hours straight. You got,
Right.
you got to take a break.
Yeah,
And that's good because that's about safety. That's about driver
Right.
health and,
Yeah.
and public safety.
Yeah.
And the industry has embraced that and complied with that. And we're looking at this legislation that's going to say, or not list, the rules are going to create a situation where if you have to have an electric vehicle, and we can talk about will it do the job you want it to do also too, but
Yeah.
As those hours you have to wait for it to charge, does those count against your hours of service? I mean, you're out on the road somewhere,
right.
assuming there's a spot. But unlike your house where you can plug your electric car in, it might have cost you, a couple $1,000s to set that
change
up
over-
in your
right,
house to
right.
plug your car in overnight. And you probably could have gotten some tax credits or some funding
Right.
assistance with that. We're talking a couple $100,000 each for each charger.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
$150,000 to $200,000
I have to
to
tell you
install.
a little joke. I just have to tell you this.
Please.
I
I know,
haven't
I'm being
thought
so
of it.
grim and focused.
No, no,
Please.
no. My husband's mother was sadly in Dartmouth. And we went to a place near there, a little diner place to have something to eat before we went to see her. And we're in a booth, and opposite us, just directly opposite, were 2 guys, and they were doctoring their time cards because they didn't want to stay over. They've already, driven as far as they could go. And at the time, my husband was a captain in the state police, and I was the commissioner of motor vehicles
In Vermont.
in Vermont. But I wasn't
Okay.
in Vermont. I
And
was
you were in New
I'm
Hampshire,
in New
yeah.
Hampshire. So, but we are cracking up. And so on the way out, I put my business card and Bruce put his right in front of them. I thought they were going to have a heart attack, the two of them. They didn't know whether to laugh or to say, you know, take me away. I said something like, I hope you gentlemen are not coming north. And they just, but it was interesting listening to them, how they knew how to doctor the time cards correctly so they didn't get into trouble.
Yeah.
But funny, oh my God.
Well, we don't want folks getting in trouble, right?
Right,
and,
no, we don't.
And we don't want companies having to spend a lot more money on an asset that doesn't do the job.
Correct.
So aside from the charging side of it, the numbers aren't getting any better on them. And all these battery cells come out of China.
Ah, wonderful.
Who has a bit of a
That's
tariff on it
right.
these days.
Yeah.
We're at what, 145%, give or take. Maybe they're exempt, maybe they're not. Maybe we'll change it tomorrow.
Yeah, because you must be dealing with all the tariffs and all the, well, I think maybe more on the other people that you represent, the lumber supply and everything.
Well, the building supplies coming out of Canada ended up being exempted from that particular
Oh, really?
tariff. Yeah, it was
Oh,
kind
that's
of
good.
But it wasn't that way originally, and there was quite a lot of the fluidity of the current federal situation is a problem.
Yeah, every day it
Let's just
seems
put
to
it
be.
that way.
Yeah, exactly. They say they know what they're doing, but I'm not so sure, you know.
Well, we're stuck with them for now, so
Yeah.
off we go. And so, you know, Vermont businesses, you know, what's that? You always need to work on your area of your influence, not necessarily your area of concern.
That's right.
You know, what do you control? What can you deal with? What can you influence versus what are your worries? And try to, you know, we've all got that bigger worry, that federal worry out there. But what can we do in Vermont for this? And that's.
And you told me you were dealing a lot with Matt Cota.
Yeah, sure.
From Meadow Hills, who's mostly the Cota dealership down in, where is he, Bennington or Brattleboro?
Brattleboro, yeah, his family are
But he's been on the show
there.
quite a few times talking about the gas issues and all of the clean this and clean that, and driving him crazy, I think.
Well, one of the things that the Global Warming Solutions Act included, of course, was a private right of action. You know, if Vermont didn't comply,
Right.
any group that was affected by that could bring suit, and I think Conservation Law Foundation
They were the first.
did
They
in fact sue them over not doing enough, and you know, you need to waive. I think on the other hand, a trucking association could take the same route.
Right.
That's not what we're built for. That's not generally our MO, if you will.
Right. Well, get their attention.
Well, we're going to have to wait and see what happens in the legislature. And
Now,
what the
you were
government
here
does.
when they put that law in that that you could sue us, or people could sue us. It doesn't seem like a good idea to me to flag it that they can be sued. We can be sued if we don't meet our own projections, because I don't think we're going to meet them from the way it's going. Forget it. So everybody's going to be able to sue us.
Well, all these issues fundamentally come down to government trying to guide people to make certain decisions for their business or for themselves, right? And in this case, what they're guiding us towards, we're saying no. We're not, because those trucks don't do the job you need them to do. Some of them can, in limited situations, but they're pretty limited to where you kind of leave from and come back to the same location every night, and you've got enough, it would have to have enough power and range to do what you want it to do for the day. And what we're saying isn't like we don't ever want to do this. Like right now, this technology is not there yet.
No, we're not ready.
And that Global Warming Solutions Act had 3 key benchmarks you had to hit, not for how clean you have to be, but it said anything you do has to be cost effective, technologically feasible, and equitable. And I'm looking at this going like,
1 out of 2? 3?
no, we're 0 for 3.
Yeah.
You know?
That's not good. They must understand it, though. Do you have somebody on the transportation that actually, like Bobby Starr, owns his own fleet?
There are, yeah. I think
there?
House
Are there?
Transportation's got some truckers on it.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
Oh, that's good.
They do. And of course, Senator Westman in the Senate, the chair, the new chair of transportation, his family are dairy farmers and run big rigs all the time.
There
or
you go.
Trucks of some sort.
because I just remember Bobby Starr. Was
Oh, yeah. Well,
Classic.
He was on the board of Truck and Bus for many years.
Oh,
as
yes, he
Senator
was.
Starr.
Yeah, I loved him. Anyway, so if we could, now,
Yeah.
so what do you think's going to happen? I mean, where are we in the process?
Well, we're all playing this game of chicken right now, running towards June, and
see if we
hoping
can outweigh the
who's gonna
outlast.
do what we're asking to be done.
Yeah.
And being in the middle of that's not particularly fun.
No, I bet not.
And any one of you could do this. Anyone being legislature or the governor or the president, right, or Congress.
Right.
One of you four do it. Pick one. I don't.
Yeah.
I almost swore.
Sorry.
I don't.
We
give
can edit that out. Don't worry.
Well, it's just pick somebody do it because this is affecting these businesses.
Right.
And to get back to my farm reference from earlier was that it used to be that you could go get supplies for your dairy farm within an hour's drive of almost anywhere in the state of Vermont. By the time my family got out of doing this 20-something years ago, you were going to Syracuse, New York, or to get parts. You were going to Albany. You were going to southern New Hampshire to get things, and that's because that infrastructure was no longer successful here. So it didn't support that industry as well as it did. And the risk here is that these truck dealerships are going to have the same thing happen to them.
Yep.
And so then the trucking company in South Burlington or Derby Line or Brattleboro is going to have to go where for its not just its trucks but its parts, its service.
Oh, wow.
All those things and all those businesses. Where are those workers going to go? I've in 25 years or so of doing this in the legislature, until this year, I've never said to them, if you keep doing this, these businesses will go out of business.
And you've said that this year.
And I've said that this year for the very first time, and it really worries me because they're not just my clients; they've become my friends, and I respect them enormously. And because they do what we all don't want to do, right? Remember during COVID when you sit at home and buy stuff off Amazon? Well, who do you think was trucking that to your house?
That's right.
I mean, whether it came in a UPS truck or on a flatbed, truck out of Burlington.
I'm very grateful. They even delivered right to my back door through the garage, and I thanked the guy the other day for doing that. That was really nice. I think he's seen me and Bruce and figured we need help. You can't leave it there. These people have to lug it. So you've mentioned Vermont Truck and Bus, and I had more fun with that group and with Ed and you, and they had the best annual meetings ever. With those big trucks, they would give those homemade trucks. I have one left. My grandchildren have taken.
Yeah. Oh, the big wooden trucks that were like
that's a DMV
a centerpiece basket. Yeah.
And I had, one of them had logs in it, which I thought was really cool. Somebody took the time to make logs in the back, and so it was great walking home with my prize. But so this year, are they keeping you busy with things? Because the last issue I got involved in the legislature was the idling of buses in schools. That was a big issue. And they finally, I must say, my grandson, who made a comment about his throat hurting, if they had to sit on the bus, I went, okay, that's it, I know how to vote. So I voted to turn it off.
Yep.
But that was a big issue back then. And what have they been bugging us about now with the truck and bus?
Well, the other things they really do keep coming back to this whole vehicles, because it's also buses. I mean, we've had some pilot programs that have been largely funded by the feds to have school buses, to have, you can find programs to get in it, and some schools have done that, and they bought buses, and some of them aren't doing so well. There was a big company called Lion that was building a lot of these buses, electric buses, that went out of business just recently. I mean,
really? Because they used to talk about seatbelts in the buses, and the big argument was they're built to be safe without the
Yeah,
belts.
those big padded high seats
Yeah,
that are
that's why
close together.
exactly, that's why they're there.
Yeah, as a grown human, you kind of get in them and you're like, you can't quite fit.
You can't see anything. But that was the reason they were built like that, more for safety, that you don't, because it would be harder to get all the little kids out of the belt.
Or into the belts to begin with,
Yes,
or
well,
keep them on
exactly.
them. You know, what would a bus driver do if he found out a kid didn't have a seatbelt? He probably had to pull over and stop and do it.
Yeah.
Fix them up.
Yep, there
And
you go.
I mean, kids would be getting home at 6 o'clock.
That was a lot of testimony on that, but it made sense that they built the buses for that protection, so you wouldn't go flying out the
Right.
front.
Yeah, well, you can hardly move in the seat now.
But they don't, they do what? What
You
is
can
it?
hardly move in those seats
Oh, yeah.
now. You have to sit sideways. You know?
So, and what else, I'm trying to think of all the things we would, was obviously,
Well, other issues are, you know, as cars get more efficient, fuel efficient, as trucks get more fuel
Right.
efficient, which they are. I mean, what I've heard is that the current diesel trucks that are out there are significantly more fuel efficient than even 1 or 2 years ago.
really,
I should have looked it up, but I forgot to. Had a bit of a
we'll
migraine this
forgive you.
morning, or I would have told you exactly why. But what I can tell you is that some of the new trucks that are diesel trucks get 1 or 2 miles per gallon better. That doesn't sound like much till you realize
Well,
that
it is
maybe
if
they
you-
get 7 to start. So now
Yeah.
if you get 8, that's significant.
That's
That's
good.
14% better.
Yeah.
You know, not just 1 mile per gallon, but that's 14% better. Not like our cars that are 25 and you get 1, you'd be like, you wouldn't even notice it. But
right.
so it's getting cleaner out there. I guess I'd say when you look back 25, 30 years, a truck now versus a truck in the early 90s is 60 times cleaner than a truck was back then. So
Wow.
60 tractor trailers
That's
going
great.
down the interstate have the emissions of one truck from back then.
Nice.
You know, so it's been worked on. It's largely from, no question, federal regulation has driven that on a federal level.
Yeah.
But when you do these piecemeal, state by state, it doesn't work, and it creates disruptions in these small businesses, medium-sized businesses, Vermont businesses that they're really worried about. And that was the message I needed to deliver to the legislature this year, and I think we did. You know, I had trucking company owners, I had dealer general managers coming in and telling them just what I'm telling them, you know,
Right.
because they need to hear, as I say, they need to hear from real people. Right?
Not
You know,
you
lobbyists
lobbyists.
are we real people? Well,
No,
we work for real people, but you know, outside of this, I am a real
they
person.
do like to hear from,
Yeah.
just because you have the boots on the ground,
Right.
yeah.
You know, I can set it up, but eventually it's got to be
Yeah.
that business person coming in there and telling their truth.
Yep.
And legislators sometimes seem surprised that, wow, he said the same thing Bill Smith said. You know,
Why is that?
why would I lie to you people? I don't know.
No, I think you wouldn't have lasted this long unless they had a great deal of respect for what you say, because that's your bread and butter,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
they've got to believe what you're saying.
Well, you know, what's that old saying? Those who love sausage or law should never watch either one being made.
Yeah,
Right? I mean,
exactly.
that's very
It's
true.
ugly, yes.
You know, it's a hot mess down there, and it's people that have really regimented thinking, it drives them crazy. You know, and I work, like, for example, the people that own these companies, you know, that I work for, they're the boss, right?
Yeah,
when they're back at the shop at home, at their home business,
Yeah.
what they say goes, and there's no questioning what they
right.
do. And then you put them in a political situation where people are questioning you,
Right.
and they're like,
Hey,
it's
you know
quite
who
quite
I
a
am?
shock, I think, is to people that you're going to be
Well, I don't think probably haven't been challenged like that, have they?
right, not for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
You know, when you're the king or the queen, all of a sudden you walk down here and you've got to deal with representative democracy.
Well, and especially with most of those probably haven't even ever driven in a truck or driven a truck, so
Yeah,
they don't know much about the area.
it's not easy
No, it's
to
not.
do.
But we have a lot to be thankful for our truckers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth. I mean, they put in the hours, and time is money for them. And
Yeah.
so is the tariff, none of the tariff issue isn't bothering any of this?
It is a worry. I mean,
Parts?
it's you know, the supply chain for
Right.
you know, repairs of vehicles themselves is getting longer every
Yeah.
year. so much stuff is made overseas now.
COVID must have been terrible when they had all of this backup in the supply chain, right?
Yeah,
That was bad.
yeah. As my grandmother used to say, you gotta use it up, wear it out, fix it up, or do without. Right? That was like,
Well, I love some of those trucks. Whenever I see, there's a gentleman who shall remain nameless, but he's got a truck with pretty much a mini apartment in the back of his truck. It's not just a sleeping compartment.
oh, sure.
I mean, it's like a livable
Yeah,
space.
it's a
kitchen,
condo in the
yeah,
back there, yeah.
And whenever we go to any of the field days that they have in those trucks there, I always ask them if I can. Some of them are really
The sleeper
something.
cab, yeah.
Yeah, they're great.
Well, that's the kind of thing that you have to custom order a couple of years in advance.
Yeah.
You need to like put your order in and have it made for you special.
Well,
And they do it.
We have that in the municipality too. When you want to buy, like say a fire truck or something.
Sure.
You got to plan ahead.
You spec it out.
Yes, you do.
Specifications.
Yes, you
you're
do.
gonna,
And you look for the lowest bid. So what kind of stuff have they been? I've been looking here at the fuel and energy. That's got to be huge in truck and bus. Hours of operation. We talked about tariffs and clean air. Those. I don't know if there's anything else that would come to mind with truck and bus.
right.
Has it been low key a little bit?
It's been just so focused on that big issue with
Yeah.
the truck rule, the zero emission vehicle rule. It's really, it's freaking people out.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I hope that they can all get together and make them pay attention. So on your other group here, the supply, what is the name of it? I just
Building
lost
supplies.
it. Building
We
supply.
call them the Vermont Retail Lumber Dealers Association.
There you go.
We call
And
them.
what does that comprise of? Who do you deal with?
Well, you can
through
think
that?
of like your local building supply stores,
Yeah.
RK Miles.
Oh, Miles, yep.
Curtis Lumber, those kind of folks, right? They're all over the state. We call them lumber yards, when you pull in,
Yeah.
or, pull lumber in Williamstown, you pull in there, you drive into the building and put your 2x6s in the back of your pickup truck and off you go.
I think they're expensive, more so than they used to be. We bought a couple of long pieces of wood for a molding.
Yeah.
And I almost had a heart attack when I
Sure.
went up to the checkout.
Yep.
So it's not cheap anymore.
It's all, everything's sticker shock now.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to get someone to build something for you.
You die, right?
If they can't do it this year, I'll guarantee, unless, if they're any good.
Oh, because
and they're
they're
gonna
all
cost
backed
you
up?
more. Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's, building more homes in Vermont. I mean, this goes way back to when I worked for Kevin Dorn at the Home Builders
right.
Association in the 90s. I mean, it was the same issue then. Builders were saying, we're building clean, energy efficient homes in a way that's sensitive to the environment. Get the heck out of our way. But the trick there, and the trick that I've never seen anybody wave the magic wand and figure this out yet. But the trick really is finding the people who own who owns the real estate in the places where you want the building done,
Right.
and then find ways to incentivize them to do that.
Yeah, right.
Because you can have the best ideas in the world, but if no one's going to say, yeah, you can take my 10 acres in the back here and build some houses out there, it's never going to happen.
Right.
So how do we get those people together with the people that can build and the people that need a house to pay for, and will pay for it? Because if we get enough of them, it'll bring those prices down. But right now, it's crazy. I mean, I had a legal client in my law office client was trying to find a builder for a piece of land that they have, and it was cheaper to buy another house on more acres than to have someone come and build a house for them.
Really?
Yeah, it's $300, $400
That
a
didn't
square
used to
foot,
be.
Pat.
Wow.
Pat, $300 or $400 per square foot in a house.
Oh, my God.
Do the math. If you want to
Yeah.
build a 1,500 square foot house, which is a small house, that's a $600,000 structure.
There's not much demand for the tiny houses, are there? I love them.
You love watching the TV show, The Tiny House?
I do. I
Oh,
love
those
it.
used to drive me crazy.
Why? You didn't-
Well, first of all, everyone's trying to figure out cool ways to make things really space efficient.
Right.
Well, guess who figured that out about 60 or 70 years ago? Winnebago.
Oh, there you go.
Right?
Right. For sure.
And at the end of those shows, you ever notice, like 9 times out of 10, the tiny house that you could pull behind a pickup truck that they've set it up for is parked next to mom and dad's pool on their ranch somewhere. that they go inside and they could take showers in the mom's house,
They have two of them in Barry City, and I go by there all the time. I think they're cool.
Well,
They
no, I
just
think
need more windows, but you could fix that,
Huh.
right? Because they're cool. I like them.
We can get you fine window products at your local building supply store.
You'd have to like the person you're with, though, a lot, because there's no place to hide.
Well, it's like living on a boat. I've never done that, but
Yeah.
it looks pretty cramped.
Yeah, well, we have my husband and I had RVs. We've been camping for years and years, and just recently sort of stopped. But we made a mistake of buying a 17-foot trailer when we were going across country because we thought that'd be easier to maneuver.
Too small.
Oh, we almost killed each other.
Yeah.
Even the
No.
dog hated it because there was no place for the dog to go except on the bed. We
Yeah.
sold it to come back home. We sold it and used the money to stay in hotels on the way back.
That's the thing about those is the technology that's developed for that kind of RV camping, if you will, is not being used by the folks building the tiny houses. Where's your black water and gray water go? Where's your clean water come from? Where does your electricity come from? How do you plug that in safely so you don't kill yourself?
Yeah.
I mean,
Picky. Yeah,
I know they don't think that out. But you know who thought about it? Winnebago.
Yeah, there you go. Well, the biggest one we had was...
I'm just coming up for that
the biggest one we ever had was 40 foot, I think, 42. That was amazing.
Holy, 40 feet long?
Yeah, and we parked it. It was for the summer, so we parked it.
What kind of CDL you got to have for that, Madam Commissioner?
Oh, he has one.
Yep.
So he's not allowed to give it up.
No. Well, he was doing ski patrol at Bolton when I was about 18, 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so did you ski with Bruce?
I was on ski patrol with him, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm not sure that I mentioned who I was interviewing this evening.
Well, he may not remember me.
There you go.
He was a big shot.
Are you
and I was
kidding?
just
That
new-
man's
I was
got
a
a
new
memory.
guy. I was a new guy.
Oh, that's all right. He'll know. He's had a memory that scares me. He always remembers things that I don't. So, lobbying. We have the lobbying table in the cafeteria where everybody sits.
Yep.
The lobby. Do you help each other out and about stuff? Because it's a pretty tight group, isn't it?
Well,
Seems to be.
What's that always? We'll all hang together or we'll all hang separately.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, it's, but no, it's good to have, friends that maybe say, hey, there's something come up in that committee about I know you got an issue in there, you might want to go check it out. Or if you see something that it's like, ooh.
Yeah, because it happens fast, like now, at the end of the session.
Yeah, now's when it's getting fun.
Yeah, because they don't post when they make changes or that stuff.
Yeah.
I love the webs that you can Zoom. I get a big kick out of seeing in the room itself, maybe you'll have 10 people, members of the public, but on Zoom, you can have up to 45, 50.
Oh, no.
And it's great.
Those committee rooms are small.
Yeah.
And they would get, particularly as it gets warmer now, like on Tuesday, it's going to be 84 degrees.
Oh, wow. Well, they'll start.
That's going to be ripe.
But isn't Zoom great, though? Because you can't talk, thank goodness, because sometimes I'm home being very vocal, yelling.
Right. Well, being there is, always have to judge, do I need to be in the room?
Right.
Or do I need to know what they're doing in the room? And the answer is different.
Yeah, because it was so funny.
time.
The other day, I'm working on something with Campaign for Vermont, and I just coincidentally ran into the chair of the committee and we had a chance to talk in the hallway, and I accomplished my mission. And who knew? I may not have had that happen had I sat in the meeting.
Well, that's really the great the wonder, actually, of the Vermont political process in the State House is the egalitarian nature of it all. I mean,
the access is incredible, isn't it?
Right,
I mean,
right. And I don't say that because I'm an advocate. I say that because I'm a fan and a student of the legislative process. It's supposed to be this jumbled up mess that happens, and it's probably not that much different than the Greeks in
and the Roman
2,500 years ago.
Right.
I mean, but we have a lot broader access to this, which is very important in our society, and I think that even as you know, we have, what, 600 lobbyists, 500 or 600 lobbyists
Right.
in little Vermont, you
Yeah,
know,
right,
and like, oh
right.
my God, what's up with that? Well, a lot of them are kind of, you know, one or two issue people. That might be someone that runs a nonprofit group that's very focused on one
Yep.
issue, and they might be down there, you know, 3 or 4 days out of a session.
Yep.
You know, then there's the folks that are the real, you know, the contract lobbyists that, you know, Ed and I used to have a lot more clients than I've got now, right?
Well, if you
You know,
just,
Yeah.
you can only do so much.
Right.
Right.
You know, when you make a decision that you want to be, you know, solo practice as an attorney and have a good local client base in the Northfield area, you know, that
Right.
are, you know, always, I'm humbled by the people I get to work for, whether it's in lobbying or as a lawyer, is, you know, just the decent, hardworking people of the state of Vermont are just the best people in the world.
They are. It's good that you said they are. And Northfield is a wonderful town.
Yeah.
It's really great.
My mom grew up there.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, she did.
I love it.
Yeah.
So if you need, if you lose a client or you want to take on more, how do you find clients?
That's kind of largely it's word of mouth, you know. I mean, you know, if somebody's I mean, I've done that too. I've referred people that say, hey, you know, who should I get to work on this issue? I'm like, well, sorry, I can't do it. I'm working for the trucking, but you know,
Right.
here, call. Here's 2 or
Great.
3 names, you know.
That's good.
Give them a call, you know.
That's great.
And it's kind of a
'Cause it's not
It's
competition.
not really a very specific, you know.
No, but I've never felt competition amongst the legislature, lobbyists, excuse me.
Lobbying groups.
Excuse me. Because there isn't that competition.
Right. Well, I mean, my business model isn't in competition at all with,
Yeah, but-
with the big
Right.
groups there that have 50 clients. You know,
Oh,
like, look at a couple
as a candidate, with somebody, if you wanted to give to my campaign, I usually have to ask,
Yeah.
who are your clients?
right.
Because some you may not want to
Yeah.
take money from, and you have to be a little careful. Some of them, like Leonis and some of those others, are just huge.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they are, and I don't. You know, they make it work. You know,
Yeah.
that's a business model that is a lot of work.
Yeah, and I bet people don't understand what lobbyists do. And you are an expert now in truck and bus, and
an
well,
expert.
you have to be to
I
last
keep,
this
well,
long.
it's hard to say I'm an expert because I'm always learning.
Well, there you go. That's a good thing too.
You know.
That's a good thing. And the legislature, I'm trying to think, who are the chairs of the people that you, Mike, Economic Development. there's
Mark
Mike
Marcotte in
McCott,
Commerce.
and I'm just thinking, those people, they're not new. There's so many new ones
Oh yeah.
that, and new chairs that haven't even been in the legislature a long time, and they were moved up
Yep.
to chair, which really surprised me.
Yep.
They're very smart, like woman here from not Ann Donahue, Ann in Montpelier.
Cummings or
no.
Ann Watson.
Ann Watson.
Yep,
She's
yep.
chair, and I thought, my God, she's only served
Sure.
one, but she is so smart. It's just, I think it's hard to know how to be chair and get everything moving, because as you just said, at the end of the session, it all works out. And you think, what is going on? And next thing you know, the budget's passed, this bill's passed, everything's done, and they go home, and there you go.
Well, it's the old rule of thumb used to be that once they got the budget and the transportation bill and the capital budget in conference committee, you had 2 weeks to go, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, that's okay. So we got 2 weeks to go now, but
I think education's going to mess that
Yeah.
comment up,
they
because I
seem
think,
to be working on that. Went to Senate Finance, I think, that the education governance
Yeah.
bill. I am actually working on that issue a bit.
on education.
Because, well, think about your high school, the tech centers.
Mm-hmm.
Pump out diesel mechanics and
Yep.
and construction workers and folks that want to be plumbers and electricians and all those
Oh, that's great.
tradespeople.
So what do you do to get involved with them?
Just you try to get them to make the tech centers a higher priority. If you look at
Thank you for that.
H454, I think is the bill. Don't quote me. I'm pretty sure that's right. They put it front and center on that. Our career and technical education
That's
centers need to be a higher priority, and because those are the folks that are going to be out there working in Vermont.
Yep.
and raising families here and having a good job. I mean, if you are an electrician or a plumber or a general contractor, or you pour concrete, like I did that after college, I was a concrete guy.
Yeah,
Those are good jobs.
yeah, and they pay well. And it's a shorter time learning. It's 2 years instead of 4, so there's a big saving there.
Right.
I love tech ed, and none of those jobs are going anywhere.
Right.
You always need plumbers.
You need them. And you need them more now.
And
'cause
we
need more housing, right?
You know this from transportation. We have the oldest age group of construction workers.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a real concerning thing. You can't.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was
we need the
when I
younger
was in my early 20s working construction, and they had these old guys on the job site that were like they're like early 40s.
Oh, that's
But they
old?
looked
Well, sure.
rough, you know. But now when you're talking 50, 55, I mean, same thing with a truck driver.
Yeah.
Mid 50s. Yeah.
And that
What
takes
do you-
its toll on.
What are you going to do in 10 years when these folks have all retired? Yeah, who's in the pipeline?
I interviewed Don Koch on the radio one time, who's a long haul driver.
Yep.
And they need to know so much, all the regulations,
Oh,
IFTA,
God, yeah.
RIFTA, all of these.
Load securement,
yeah.
right? Making sure your load isn't going to fall off
There
the
you
back of
go,
your
and
truck.
you're responsible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's scary. Would you know, you're driving down the road and a load of pipes come off the back of a flatbed. Jesus,
That's not good.
You're going to die.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, that's important stuff. So all these companies do all that. You know.
But it's a good living. I mean, it's a good, you make good money doing it. It's just takes a toll.
It's it's a full contact job. I would say. You know.
So do you have, remember when they changed, you must have still been doing this, IFTA, RIFTA, when it was the regional to international, and Bonnie Rutledge and I went out and all over Vermont, and we talked to groups of truck drivers to tell them about this transfer from regional to international. I was so impressed. They run that's an actual business that they run in their cab 24/7. They have to know time and know all the rules and regulations and.
You mean like about the fuels tax and different in
Yeah,
international?
and all that stuff, and the Jake brake signs aren't that illegal. Do you know that? Do you know those Jake brake signs that you see in Woodstock?
Oh yeah.
It's illegal because it's a safety feature of a bus or a truck, and you can't put anything.
Every vehicle over 26,000 pounds has to have engine braking components in it, because if the other brakes fail,
Yes,
really bad things are going to happen.
and that's why they're not allowed to say no Jake brakes.
But they do anyway.
I know, but because people think it's real, but it's not. So
Well, there
somebody's
was a
going to hear
discussion
this show,
about
and I'm
that.
going to be in big trouble.
Well, no, we did have a discussion in the legislature about them. There was some concern about the noise
Well,
of Jake brakes, and by and large, if you hear a really noisy truck,
Right.
it probably does not have a compliant Jake brake.
So maybe you could report it or something.
Sure, call
Yeah.
it. But Vermont also doesn't have any regulation of that. There's there's a bill that came out of the Senate that first when you say they want to regulate trucks, you're like your knee-jerk reaction is no. But then you look at it, you go, oh, okay, we're okay with that.
Yeah.
And what they're trying to do there.
Well, I think they're just asking them to not do it. Not to do
You
it
need to have a
often.
mechanism for which law enforcement
Right.
needs to have a clear guideline to enforce.
There you go.
And if they can't, they won't. Not because they like the noise,
Yeah.
but because
There's
it's
no-
like, what do you want me to do?
Right.
If you're coming down a hill in the Woodstock and you have a loud Jake brake,
Yes.
I always pick on Woodstock, but
Well, that's why they have the signs.
why not?
But I think there says something about don't use it. It's something about don't use it every 2 minutes. Kind of watch the use of the Jake brake because they can't tell you not to.
But again, that's one of those things like, attorneys and lobbyists, I think, get very used to being educated about a very complicated thing by people that know, like a trucking company owner knows all about Jake brakes and how they apply and how they're maintained and what noises they should be making.
Yeah.
And when you start talking to those folks, you go, oh, we're already doing this? Oh, we shouldn't worry about this regularly? Okay, fine.
There you go.
And it's just,
Well, I wish.
Because the folks that have the loud Jake
Right.
Briggs, they give the trucking industry a black eye, you know?
Yeah. But if you're coming down, I love when you see the sand pits that they can get off the hill.
The emergency escape.
Yeah, right, exactly.
routes,
I
yeah.
saw one truck actually go in there. It stopped it after a while, and then it went zzz.
Yep.
I don't know how they get them out of there, but
You call a very large wrecker. No, and they charge you a lot of money,
I bet
and they
they
pull
do.
you out. But again, it beats the alternative
yeah,
of
right,
running
you're going
into that,
into 302.
running into that
right.
CVS at the bottom of Hospital Hill.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. I only saw that once over all the years we've been living here. So what would you hope happens at the end of this year in our 3 minutes that we have left
Oh, yeah.
here?
Well, I think I hope one of those four groups, legislature, governor, president, Congress,
Somebody.
would pump the brakes, not
Yeah.
to take it, but pause the rules until we can see if the technology is going to catch up to the goal.
Have you reached out to our congressional delegation?
Yeah,
Okay, moving on.
yeah, I did.
That's not working?
Well, they're polite and
Yeah,
say thanks. And
see ya.
well, remember, Peter Welch used to be in the Senate,
Yep,
Senate Pro Tem, and
Yeah.
was on the Transportation Committee and knows the issues pretty well.
yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
I enjoy Peter. I've had him on the show here. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
We disagree on a few things.
Well, that's the thing. We can disagree without being disagreeable.
Yep, that is a benefit to Vermont. You can
Yeah.
be disagreeable and still be friends,
Yeah.
because certain things you just don't talk about.
Right.
There you go.
Right. And I think that's what, and I think lawyers generally are pretty comfortable with that because, in a courtroom setting,
Well, you can say
I'm across the field from you, I get
Right.
from you, but we're still friends,
What sort of general, what courts do you go into?
More and
mostly?
more I'm in probate court.
Probate.
I think it's kind of the natural progression of a law practice. I've been doing this for 32 plus years now. And, your clients are,
Getting older?
well, yeah,
They're all dying.
First you're representing them DUIs, and then
Yeah.
you're representing them like buying a house and getting married and starting a business, and
And
then
they die
they're doing
on you,
their
right?
estate planning, and then they,
There you
then they
go.
die.
You get to know them very well then.
Yeah, well, yeah. So,
Yeah. Probate, that's funny.
yeah.
So, all right, I got you off track.
Best
What
court
would
in
you-
Vermont.
What would you like to see besides your, what is the name, what is the, what do they call that?
Can't pick your brain, Pat.
I don't know, advanced clean truck rule.
Pause those rules for a couple of years. Let's make our career tech ed programs a much greater focus.
We love you.
That's, if they do those two things, that'd be good.
When I worked deputy commissioner of education, and I used to bring in people from the trucking companies to talk to people in education, telling them how much they need tech ed people.
Yeah,
And he said, we'll train them,
diesel mechanics.
but just bring them in where they understand and know, because they're desperate for helpers. Anyway there, Mr. Smith, I
Well,
really
10
appreciate
seconds,
your
okay.
coming on board. Thank you for that.
Well, thanks, Pat.
You and the 500 other lobbyists, but you have a very nice office, by the way. That's a great house.
Oh,
No, it is, it's nice.
thanks.
So I thank you kindly, sir, and I'm going to tune out right now. This is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites. Thank you, William Smith.